The sky fractured into 1,000 bleeding shards of crimson as the final stronghold of humanity crumbled to dust. High above the burning ruins, the colossal form of the evil god Vindra unleashed an endless wave of dark purple void energy. Satsuna Cromwell fell to his knees on the blood-stained earth, looking around at the lifeless bodies of his closest allies. His magic reserves were completely depleted, and his legendary staff lay snapped in half beside him. Refusing to accept this absolute annihilation, he drew a glowing golden pocket watch artifact from inside his tattered coat. The Relic of Rebirth began to spin violently, absorbing the very remnants of his fading life force. As Vindra's final destructive beam descended upon him, Satsuna shattered the glass face of the artifact with his thumb. A blinding flash of chronological magic consumed his entire vision, erasing the screams of the dying world. Suddenly, the smell of burning ash vanished, replaced by the crisp aroma of polished wood and fresh lilies. He gasps loudly, clutching his chest to find his pristine Silver Academy uniform completely untouched by blood. Loud murmurs and youthful laughter echoed throughout the massive cathedral surrounding him on all sides. He looked at his youthful, unscarred hands and realized the relic had successfully sent him back exactly 10 years. This day was the infamous blessing ceremony, the exact moment his previous tragic path had been set in stone. In his past life he had chosen high-tier elemental spellcasting, which ultimately proved too slow against the god of destruction. He remembered how the traditional long-range spells required precious seconds of incantation that cost millions of lives. The elderly headmaster stepped up to the podium, his ornate golden robes rustling softly against the marble floor. "Welcome, initiates, to the ceremony that will define your magical affinity and shape the future of our kingdom," the old man proclaimed. A tense silence immediately washed over the crowd of students as the floating crystal orb pulsed with blinding white light. A wealthy noble student stepped forward confidently, placing his hand upon the stone pedestal to claim his fire affinity. The entire audience erupted into loud cheers as the orb confirmed his high aptitude for destructive elemental magic. Satsuna watched the display quietly, his analytical mind tracking the inefficient flow of mana in the noble spellcasting technique. "Next up, Satsuna Cromwell, please step forward to receive your blessing," the proctor called out from the stage. Satsuna stood up slowly, smoothing out his uniform jacket before walking down the long stone aisle toward the altar. Whispers spread like wildfire among the peers who remembered him only as a mediocre student from a minor noble family. Ignoring the background noise, he stepped onto the stone platform and stood directly in front of the massive swirling orb. He placed his right hand firmly onto the smooth, cold surface of the ancient channeling stone pedestal. Instead of letting the orb dictate his future, Satsuna forcibly injected his massive refined willpower into the machine. The artifact groaned under the sudden immense pressure, its internal gears and runes spinning faster than ever before. The headmaster leaned forward, gripping his magical staff tightly as he sensed an impossibly vast sea of mana hiding inside the boy. Satsuna knew that to defeat Vindra in 10 years he needed a style that minimized casting time and maximized kinetic destruction. He bypassed the popular paths of pyromancy and cryomancy, deliberately steering his mana toward the physical enhancement circuits. A heavy metallic gold color slowly filled the crystal orb, representing the most neglected discipline in the modern era. The proctor rubbed his glasses in complete disbelief, staring at the magical text that manifested in the air. A wave of stunned silence instantly gave way to loud, mocking laughter from the noble sections of the auditorium. "Close combat magic, that is just a trash path for thugs who lack the intelligence to cast real spells," someone shouted. The academy considered physical magic to be an obsolete relic of the past, useful only for manual labor or basic guard duty. "Satsuna Cromwell, do you wish to re-evaluate your choice before the final confirmation binding takes place?" the headmaster asked solemnly. Satsuna pulled his hand back from the stone, raising his head to lock eyes with the powerful old leader. He tightly clenched his right fist, causing a sudden shockwave of pure condensed physical mana to ripple across the stage floors. Sudden cracks spider-webbed across the reinforced marble beneath his boots from the sheer weight of his aura. "I will not change my path, for this fist is exactly what will shatter the very gods themselves," Satsuna announced clearly. As the final golden seal branded itself permanently onto his right wrist, a sudden dark, ominous chill flashed through his mind. The forbidden watch in his pocket vibrated with an intense warning heat, signaling that altering the past had just awakened something terrible ahead of schedule. The burning sensation in Satsuna's pocket grew sharper as he stepped away from the crowded blessing ceremony. He pressed his palm firmly against the hidden relic to suppress its sudden violent fluctuations. The evil god Vindra's influence was already rippling through the timeline because of his choice. Satsuna ignored the whispers of the elite students who watched him leave the grand hall. He navigated the sprawling academy grounds toward the isolated training grounds on the eastern edge. The close combat magic department building looked completely deserted and severely neglected. A giant man with deep scars across his arms stood waiting at the center of the dusty training field. Instructor Balthazar looked at the new recruit with a mixture of amusement and fierce disdain. He claimed that fragile nobility never lasted more than 3 days under his brutal regime. Satsuna merely bowed respectfully without uttering a single word of complaint or defense. The very next morning, the grueling physical conditioning process began without mercy. His body, currently lacking the immense mana reserves of his previous life, screamed in agony. Balthazar constantly threw heavy wooden logs directly at Satsuna's head to force fast reactions. Multiple blunt impacts left deep purple bruises all over Satsuna's torso and arms. Instead of traditional rest, he spent his nights meticulously restructuring his internal mana circuits. By injecting magical energy directly into muscle fibers, he could bypass human physical limitations. This was the core concept of close combat magic that the current era foolishly dismissed as primitive. After 2 weeks of hellish isolation, Balthazar declared that the real test would finally begin. Satsuna stepped onto the cracked arena floor, wrapping cloth strips tightly around both hands. Without warning, the instructor lunged forward with speed that belied his massive frame. Satsuna did not try to dodge the massive downward strike heading for his shoulder. He activated his physical reinforcement spell, catching the blunt edge of the blade with bare hands. Balthazar's eyes widened in utter disbelief as his weapon remained completely immobilized. With a swift twist of his torso, Satsuna redirected the kinetic energy back into the instructor. The massive veteran stumbled back 5 full steps before regaining his steady balance. A booming laugh erupted from the instructor's throat, echoing across the empty fields. However, their celebration was cut short by the unexpected arrival of an arrogant third-year student. Reginald, a top-ranked fire mage, openly mocked the department as a refuge for talentless failures. He demanded that Satsuna vacate the premises to make room for storage expansion. Satsuna offered a simple proposition to settle the jurisdictional dispute right then and there. A formal spar would decide whether close combat magic deserved to exist at the academy. Reginald accepted immediately, eager to humiliate the arrogant freshman publicly. A small crowd of passing students quickly gathered along the fences to watch the execution. As soon as the signal was given, Reginald unleashed a massive volley of fiery projectiles. Satsuna did not retreat. Instead, he charged directly into the oncoming wall of flames. He utilized advanced footwork maneuvers to slip through the micro-gaps between the fiery explosions. Within 2 seconds, he breached the traditional casting distance that kept mages safe. Satsuna channeled his mana into his right elbow, smashing it directly into the magical shield. The flame barrier shattered into thousands of harmless, sparkling magical dust particles. Satsuna stopped his fist exactly 1 inch away from the terrified noble's nose. The surrounding crowd erupted into a stunned silence at the unprecedented defeat of an elite wizard. Suddenly, the sky above the academy darkened into an unnatural, sickly shade of deep purple. A loud mechanical ticking sound echoed through the minds of everyone present on the field. The Forbidden Watch had completely cracked open, releasing a shadow parasite that flew straight toward the main academy building. Satsuna realized with horror that an early manifestation of Vindra's generals was currently possessing someone inside the exchange match committee. Satsuna stood frozen in the dim corridor as the realization of a dark presence within the tournament committee gripped his mind. The lingering magical aura of Vindra's general felt like cold needles pricking against his skin. He knew he had to hide his suspicion until he could pinpoint the exact identity of the corrupted official. Outside the dark hallways, the Grand Colosseum of the Magic Academy buzzed with the chaotic energy of thousands of spectators. Brightly colored banners representing the rival elemental academies fluttered violently in the wind. Satsuna stepped onto the golden sand of the arena floor as the announcer bellowed his name over the loudspeakers. A group of elite elemental mages from the upper classes sneered from the opposite side of the battlefield. The crowd whispered in derision about the crazy student who chose close combat magic over traditional spells. Satsuna ignored the insults and closed his eyes to focus the mana pooling within his core. His first opponent was a renowned prodigy of the wind department named Kelwin. The referee dropped his green flag, signaling the absolute beginning of the elimination match. Instantly, Kelwin swung his wand violently forward to unleash a volley of razor-sharp wind blades. Satsuna did not retreat but instead charged directly into the incoming storm of magic. He activated his internal physical reinforcement magic, turning his skin as hard as tempered iron. The wind blades deflected harmlessly off his shoulders with loud metallic clanging sounds. Kelwin gasped aloud as the close combat mage closed the distance between them in a split second. Satsuna twisted his hips and delivered a brutal mana-infused punch directly into Kelwin's defensive barrier. The windshield shattered into a million glittering fragments, throwing the prodigy across the arena floor. The stadium fell into a dead silence as the first match concluded in less than a minute. Satsuna raised his glowing fists, proving to everyone that close combat magic was not a joke. Annoyed by the upset, the elite Flame faction sent out their most ruthless combatant for the second round. Intense waves of heat radiated across the field as the Fire Mage summoned a massive ring of fire. Satsuna adjusted his stance, lowering his center of gravity to prepare for the thermal onslaught. The opponent launched a colossal fire dragon shape made of pure consuming plasma. Utilizing future knowledge, Satsuna remembered the specific elemental weakness hidden in the core of this spell. He compressed his mana into a singular point on his right heel and executed a devastating spinning kick. The vacuum created by his high-speed physical strike instantly extinguished the roaring flames. Moving like a flash of lightning through the smoke, Satsuna appeared instantly behind the terrified Fire Mage. With a swift chop to the neck, he incapacitated the second challenger before the crowd could even blink. The stadium erupted into cheers as the underdog single-handedly dismantled the Academy's elite roster. While basking in the applause, Satsuna noticed a dark shadow moving suspiciously near the VIP booth. High above, a cloaked member of the tournament committee watched him with glowing crimson eyes. The undeniable signature of Indra's corruption radiated clearly from that specific high balcony. Satsuna realized that the final match of this tournament would be a trap designed specifically to eliminate him. The announcer's voice boomed again, declaring the arrival of the final opponent for the championship title. Out from the darkness walked his closest friend from the previous timeline, now wearing a strange artifact. His friend's eyes were completely blank, vacant of any human consciousness or recognition. Black veins throbbed violently across his friend's face, pumping corrupted godlike power through his body. The corrupted friend raised both hands as a colossal dome of forbidden dark energy enclosed the entire stadium. The spectators began screaming in absolute terror as the emergency exits locked down automatically. Satsuna realized with absolute horror that the apocalypse he fought to prevent was beginning 10 years too early. The dark clouds swirled violently above the ruined academy courtyard as the apocalypse began 10 years ahead of schedule. Cracks of pure malevolent purple energy ripped through the sky, shattering the barrier protecting the campus. Standing at the epicenter of the destruction was his old friend Zephyr, whose eyes now glowed with an unholy black fire. The surrounding students panicked and ran in all directions as the pressure from Zephyr's presence crushed the ground beneath them. Satsuna clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white, realizing the evil god Vindra had already possessed his closest companion. Zephyr laughed with a dual voice that echoed throughout the valley, declaring that humanity's extra 10 years of existence had officially expired. Satsuna took a deep breath, planting his feet firmly on the trembling ground to activate his close combat enhancement magic. He activated his internal mana circuits, forcing every ounce of magical energy into his muscular frame to match the god's overwhelming pressure. With a tremendous explosion of speed, Satsuna launched himself forward, leaving a crater where he had stood just a millisecond prior. He aimed a devastating mana-infused right hook straight at Zephyr's face, seeking to knock the corruption clean out of him. An invisible barrier of dense, black, godly energy materialized instantly, blocking the punch with a deafening metallic screech. Zephyr smirked effortlessly, claiming that simple physical strikes could never pierce the divine protection of the supreme god Vindra. With a casual flick of Zephyr's wrist, a wave of kinetic darkness blasted Satsuna backward, sending him crashing through 3 concrete pillars. Satsuna coughed up blood as he emerged from the rubble, his clothes torn but his eyes burning with an unquenchable flame of defiance. Above him, the corrupted entity raised both hands to summon thousands of black crystal spears, aiming them directly at the remaining refugees. The helpless teachers and injured students huddled together at the edge of the arena, looking up at their impending doom with absolute despair. Satsuna refused to let his past failures repeat themselves, shouting a battle cry that shattered the surrounding rocks as he leaped into the path of fire. The dark spears rained down in a continuous torrent, and Satsuna intercepted them using rapid fire, enhanced punches that pulverized the crystals into dust. Though he managed to destroy the projectiles, the sheer concussive force of the impacts began to fracture the bones in his forearms. Zephyr drifted down toward him, mocking his choice of physical combat and pointing out that his fragile human body was reaching its absolute limits. Satsuna looked at his trembling hands, remembering the tragic timeline where everyone he loved died because he wasn't versatile enough to stop the god. He realized that close combat magic wasn't about limiting himself to fists, but about focusing all elements of nature directly through his own soul. Deep within his mana core, the ancient relic of Rebirth responded to his epiphany, releasing a legendary power that had been sealed for millennia. Suddenly, a pillar of brilliant, shifting rainbow light erupted from Satsuna's body, piercing the dark clouds and illuminating the entire world. Zephyr stumbled back in genuine terror, shielding his eyes from the pure divine energy that began to cleanse the corrupting mist from the air. When the light settled, Satsuna stood transformed into the legendary rainbow spirit form, his hair floating upward and glowing with iridescent colors. Swirling bands of elemental fire, water, wind, and earth coiled around his forearms like ancient majestic dragons. Satsuna spoke with a voice that resonated with absolute authority, telling the evil god that his reign of terror over this timeline was over. Refusing to accept defeat, the possessed Zephyr gathered all his dark divinity into a single world-ending sphere of black void energy. Zephyr hurled the cataclysmic sphere downward, intending to turn the entire magical academy and the continent into nothingness. Satsuna didn't flinch. Instead, he raised a single right hand, gathering all the elemental dragons around his fist into a concentrated point of pure light. With a single decisive step that completely bypassed the concept of distance, he met the void sphere head-on with a supreme godslayer strike. The rainbow energy pierced through the center of the void, shattering the god's ultimate attack into harmless, sparkling stardust. Satsuna's glowing fist continued forward, stopping exactly 1 millimeter away from Zephyr's forehead to release the cleansing spiritual pulse. A horrifying shadow silhouette of the evil god Vindra was forcefully ripped out of Zephyr's body, screaming in agony as it dissolved into nothingness. With the god completely eradicated, Zephyr's eyes returned to their normal kind blue color, as he lost consciousness and fell forward. Satsuna caught his old friend safely in his arms, landing softly on the ground as the rainbow spirit form slowly receded back into his chest. The dark clouds completely vanished, revealing a beautiful, clear blue sky, as the entire academy burst into tears and cheers of joy. Looking around at his living, smiling friends, Satsuna finally felt the heavy burden of his 10-year solitude lift completely from his shoulders. The future had officially been rewritten, and the world's strongest close combat mage knew that this time humanity's peace would last forever.